Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on when you're watching it. We're going to go over problem 9.7 here. It is about the change in net assets and what you need to do to reconcile the change in net assets of governmental activities and the change in fund balances for the governmental funds. This is a required statement when you're presenting your financial statements to reconcile those two, because again, they're presented on different basis. The governmental activities journal is prepared using the accrual basis of accounting, whereas your governmental funds are prepared using your using the modified accrual basis of accounting. And so there's several things that you need to do in order to make those compatible, or make to reconcile those two. Okay, so we're going to start here with our change in fund balances from the governmental funds of 131,700 that's given here in the problem, and we're trying to get to the net change in governmental activities of negative 2.4 million, 248,400. Okay. So reviewing this problem, when you're looking at these, there's all kind of things that should jump out to you. Whenever you see these big things like $3 million in general obligation bonds, you got to think revenue from the governmental fund side and debt on the governmental activity side. And when you see county acquired 1.25 million in capital assets, you got to think expense on the governmental side and just a capitalized asset on the governmental activities side. Okay. Got, so this is kind of where all of the differences in for-profit accounting and governmental accounting are kind of laid bare in one statement. I think it's useful too when you're kind of thinking about the differences in kind of what you've learned in this class. Okay, so here we go. We're going to the first thing that we should notice: issuance of bonds. Issued at a premium of 101. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is that's going to be recognized as revenue on the governmental fund side, so we need to back that out because it's in this number as revenue. Okay, so let's do this. Issuance of bonds at a premium. And we're going to say this is, and we're going to subtract it out because remember it's included as revenue up here. So we're going to do equals negative 3 million, 123 times 1.01 is the same thing as 101. That's right. Let's go ahead and format everything here so it's easy to read. So we're backing out those bonds that were treated as revenue on the governmental fund side. The problem also mentioned the acquisition of capital assets of 1.25 million. Again, that's an expense or an outflow on the governmental side. So we need to put that, that's going to be an add back in this reconciliation. Okay, because again, it was an expense on the governmental fund side, and it should be capitalized for the government activities journal. Now let's see. We sold an asset. All right, so we're going to take this a piece at a time. We sold an asset, so that, and we sold it for 550,000. So the first thing we need to do is take that 550 out of revenue. Okay. Because the entire 550 was treated as revenue. There was no gain, loss, whatever. It's just 550 in cash coming in. Sale of asset, negative 550. But one other thing we need to do is we need to notice that it was sold at a loss. It had a book value of 563. and we only sold it for 550. So we had a loss of 13,000 that is not recognized on governmental fund side, but is recognized for governmental activities. So let's do loss on sale. Probably put too many columns on this. I'm having to do a lot of tabbing. All right, next thing to take a look at. The beginning of the period accrued liabilities were 470,000. At the end of the period, they totaled 446. So when you have on the for-profit side, if you think about it, if you think about a statement of cash flows and using the indirect method, I don't know if you guys have covered that in detail in your. We use the direct method now for our foundation per the new FASB requirements. We use the direct method, but if you remember, if you've done an indirect method, you have to calculate the change in a whole bunch of assets and liability accounts. Well, and if you'll remember, decreases in liabilities are considered to be increases in cash. Increases in receivable balances are considered to be decreases in cash, and on and on. So we had beginning of the period were 470. At the end of the period, they totaled 446. So that's a decrease in period accrued liabilities. And since the governmental funds really don't deal with accrued liabilities, then you have to recognize that change in order to convert this to the governmental activities balance. Accrued liabilities. All right. Now, a couple other things the problem gives you. Depreciation on capital assets, which is not recorded on the governmental fund side, is recorded on this side, so you got to add that in. Okay, and one other thing. Revenue accrued for the period but not available for use totaled 298. This key phrase right here, not available for use, tells you that it was not included in the governmental fund side, so it needs to be included for the governmental activities. We'll just call this revenue accrued. Now we'll see how we did. I've got my totals down here. Oh, all right. Change in governmental activities. I should have put that as a negative on our check figure. And you'll see there we balance perfectly. So useful. This is a useful problem. It tells us kind of, it highlights a lot of the differences between governmental accounting and regular for-profit accounting, because again, the governmental activities journal uses a lot of the same accounting methods as for-profit. So it's a good illustration there of the differences in when you're recording for governmental and for-profit accounting. So there you go. Hope this was useful to you.